Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the pre-town meeting for the annual fall town meeting, which is comprised primarily of capital expenditures, but also some housekeeping items as well. With us here tonight, my name is John Donahue. I'm the moderator. Up front with me are Gil Aligi, Jim Ross, and Dwayne Wheeler, the chairman of the Finance Committee, all three gentlemen from the Finance Committee. And what we'll do tonight is we'll briefly and fairly quickly on the reading side anyway, go through the articles of the town meeting and special town meeting, and we'll pause for a comment. I do see a lot of department heads here today, local officials, town officials that can answer any and all questions, I'm sure, in anticipation of next week's special town meeting, which is, by the way, being held at 7 p.m. In the auditorium. I believe it's the Betancourt Auditorium, Mr. Betancourt, correct? At the Raynham Middle School. Also with us tonight, I see Town Council Mark Antine, who is here to answer any questions pertaining to process, procedure, or perhaps even legality, if that were to come to bear. So, without pause, I think we'll get right into it, if that's okay. Actually, Mr. Wheeler, I believe you have some opening comments. Is that correct?
Yes, I do, Mr. Moderator. I'd like to point out that the Finance Committee is recommending all the articles, all of the money articles in the warrant. It's not written on them. However, we are recommending them. I think also tonight it's interesting that the free cash amount that we have available to us this time is $610,000, and that's basically because our managers have watched their budgets very closely, and basically when we closed fiscal 12, which is last June, as you know, we basically had free cash certified at $610,000. I think that's very important to us, because especially not only does it handle the capital expenditures, but it also allows us to put an additional $100,000 into the general stabilization account, bringing the general stabilization account to just over $1,010,000. And you remember that about 4 or 5 years ago, we actually had close to $1.3 million in the general stabilization. The Department of Revenue recommends around $1.25 million. So with this additional $100,000, we're getting very, very close to the recommended amount, which pleases the Finance Committee no end. And after we handle of the warrant and this $100,000, we still have a balance of approximately $82,000 in the free cash to handle unforeseen expenditures that happened in the next few months. So basically, I'm very, very pleased to point that out, and I do thank our managers in each of the departments for adhering to their budgets as they have. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Mr. Wheeler. So let's get right into it. Article 1, see if the town will vote to amend Section 1/5.6 of the town's general bylaws entitled Quorums by deleting the strike-through language and taking the action relative thereto. And essentially what this article does, it reduces the quorum at town meetings from 50 to 25. Comments or questions on Article 1? Sir. Sir?
Could you explain, or could someone explain in more detail what this exception is to voter elections of town officers? Is that the spring town meeting that it's referring to? Because I don't know that we elect officers at town meetings, do we?
Yes.
Yes. Which officers would that be?
Pence, U.S.
I'm sorry?
Pence, U.S.
Pence, U.S. Okay. So what you're saying is all town meetings then would only need a quorum of 25. Well, that's very disturbing to me. It really is.
I agree with you, sir. It's
And,
very-
and I don't fault any of you
No, no,
folks
no.
here. I mean,
No.
I look around and the only non-town official here is myself, Eddie, and Don. And I gotta tell you,
And I think that's the reason for having to go to the 25.
it's frightening and embarrassing, it really is. And what I guess what I would offer is that maybe this type of town government is not the right thing for this town. People don't seem to want to come out. I mean, it's probably a vote of confidence for the people that they elect, and they figure, well, they'll take care of it and they'll do it right. Unfortunately, that's not the type of government we have. You have to be out there and attend these meetings. It's very disturbing. I guess I would suggest that, you know, I understand why you do this. This is not the first time that I've seen this done at a special town meeting. I think we started out at 75, didn't we, Don? Then went down to 50.
Yeah,
So
well,
it-
exactly. We had one
Yeah,
for
so
the
it's gone down, you know, year after year, and that's disturbing. I would suggest that at least the big town meeting, if that's the right word for the one in the spring, we leave that at the 50 number. Because if we can't get people interested, there's definitely something wrong. There's something wrong.
Mr. Shavo.
Yeah, Mr. Moderator, I would say this to your point, and that is that when there are pressing issues and issues of general import, you do see a much larger participation in meetings.
Yeah.
So you have to temper that with the fact that some meetings are just rather low-key in terms of the agenda, and so the draw isn't quite so large. So I think you're going to see larger numbers depending on the issues.
I agree. I mean, the special town meetings typically are housekeeping items, and I can understand when people say, well, it's not a big deal. Again, though, I go back to the fact is, our form of government says you have to have a town meeting and you have to have people there to vote. So to that extent, it is important, no matter what the issues are, because that's the way our government is run. Or whatever. But I understand what you're saying, and you're right. But again, that would be my suggestion, at least the spring town meeting, at least you leave that at 50, good God. That's the meeting where we see all the new officials, we go through budgets, approve all the budgets and so forth. Whatever, I've said my piece.
If I could, Mr. Moderator, and
Mr. Luciano.
we've been grappling with this back to when it was 150. And I couldn't agree more with John's sentiment, except we have to face reality. And at the last annual town meeting, we were all in the back of the hall at 8:15 7:15 on our phones. Can you get your wife down here? Can you get your daughter down here? We had to call the firefighters down. We had to call other department heads down to come just to get to 50. In the business of the town, $31 million budget could not wait. It had to take place at that time period. And it's sad, but it's reality today. We have to conduct the business of the town, and if 25 is the number that's going to allow this town to conduct its business, until we do take a serious look at the form of government, if as John suggests we should, but at least in the meantime, we have to bring this down so the business of town government in May can go forward. The fall town meeting, maybe those could wait, special town meetings, but I know that May town meeting is essential for the operation of government and to set the fiscal year budget for July. And it's sad, but I've lived through too many phone calls in the back of the hall trying to get people to get down there for a quorum.
Mr. Pacheco.
Just very briefly, John, I want to stress the point, this doesn't in any way limit the amount of people who can attend.
Oh, no, I
It just,
understand
you
that
know,
completely.
I don't want there to be any false impression of
No, not at all.
that that's the case.
Not at all.
We welcome and will continue to welcome public input and public participation, but as Mr. Luciano said, when it becomes increasingly difficult to reach the 50, we have to look at other ways to, get government moving.
Completely understand. I've been at the meetings where the phone calls have been made.
You've helped
All
us.
the firemen and all the policemen come in. I understand that, but understand, 25 people determine the destiny of 13,000 people. That's all I'm saying.
Sad.
Yeah, I think it is one of your earlier points was that, maybe it's a vote of confidence for the town and the way it's being run. And I do think that that does have some validity. I think that, particularly over the last 10 or 15 years, the finances of the town have been run so well that I just think people look at the town meeting warrant and they say, unless I can find something on here that really rubs me the wrong way, why would I trek up to the middle school on a Monday night when Dancing with the Stars is on, or, I mean,
But unfortunately, as I said, our former government says you have to.
yeah, absolutely, and I can tell you that, via my participation in the Mass Moderators Association, this is not unique to Raynham. This is going on across the Commonwealth. There are a number of towns and cities, towns in this case, grappling with this very issue right now, saying, what's the right number? Some have proposed to go to 0. So you literally could start the meeting with somebody making a motion and somebody seconding it and calling a vote. Others have said, the open town meeting format is passed and they've gone to representative town meeting, which has a number of different issues, because then you find out a year down the road that not every district within the town has a candidate. Now what do you do, right? So, and yet some other towns, look no further than our sister to the northeast, have decided the town meeting isn't the proper form of government for them, and they've gone to a strong council / town manager fraught with all of its perils. So, I think I'm a huge proponent of town meeting, and while I don't think it's the perfect solution, I'm not sure what is the perfect solution. Hopefully it's not myself or my predecessor, Mr. Tripp, keeping people away from Raynham Middle School on a Monday night, but no worries. Anybody else on Article 1? Mr. Stolte?
There was some discussion after the last election that really it wasn't, the notice for these events just wasn't getting out. And then there was some discussion about having a message board, like kind of like the one that's in Taunton, but having that set in a prominent place that would identify when someone comes by and a red light's flashing saying that, town meeting is such and such. A device like that would be about $13,000. It can be paid from Chapter 90 money, and it may be something that the town needs to consider.
Not a bad idea. They're popping up everywhere. They're on the highways. Every morning it tells me it's going to take me 28 minutes to go 9 miles from Braintree to Boston. It says the same thing every morning. It's never right. Doesn't make me feel much better knowing how long it's going to take me. All right, Article 2, to see if the town will vote to amend Section 1/2.3 of the town's general bylaws entitled Council on Aging by adding the following 2 sentences after the first sentence in paragraph 2 of the bylaw, which established the Council on Aging at the annual town meeting April 3rd, 72. We're taking the action relative thereto, and it states, the Board of Selectmen shall also appoint 3 associate members, each to serve a 3-year term. An associate member shall not be a voting member except to the extent to create a quorum in the absence of a sufficient number of members. Comments or questions on Article 2? Is anybody here from COA or? Oh, hello there. Comments, questions? We do have somebody here to answer. Seeing none. Article 3, to see if the town will vote to transfer from Fund 240 sum of $5,611.83 for prior year's bills, and they are listed appropriately. Doesn't appear to be anything extraordinary there. Comments or questions on Article 3? Article 4, to see if the town will vote to transfer from the ambulance receipts reserved account the sum of $222,171, as detailed below, and for those at home, it's personnel expenses $158,605 and expenses $63,565. And this is to operate the ambulance service for the last 6 months of FY13. Any monies not used to be returned to ambulance receipts account or take any action relative thereto. Chief Janice is here, I believe. Comments, questions, Chief? No. Comments and questions for the Chief or the Finance Committee? Seeing none. Article 5, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $9,684 to the Highway Department personnel expenses account for FY13 budget as a result of settlement of the collective bargaining agreement. Mr. Stolte, comments or questions? for Mr. Stolte?
I have none, but in case someone else does.
Seeing none, Article 6, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,677 to the solid waste disposal personnel expenses account for FY13, again, as a result of a settlement of collective bargaining. Comments or questions on 6? Article 7, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $17,940 to the police department personnel expenses account to fund the settlement of contract negotiations with the communications clerks. Chief Donovan, any comments or questions for the chief? He's here tonight. Article 8, to see if the town will vote to transfer from Fund 240 the sum of $10,000 for additional auditing services for fiscal year 13 or take any action relative thereto. That's submitted by the Board of Selectmen. Comments on Article 8? Article 9, to see if the town will vote to reduce the amounts appropriated for the following budget line items for FY13 from the May 12 annual town meeting. And there are, I don't have the net differences here, but retirement of debt from $1,150,000. You get those? So it looks like we're reducing the retirement of debt by $18,750. We are reducing the interest on long-term debt by approximately $67,500, and reducing total debt. Is that total debt? Yep, total debt by a combination of those two. Let's call it 85. Comments or questions on? Looks like we restructured some GO bonds. Comments or questions on Article 9? Dwayne, is that essentially what happened?
Yes. The refinancing, yes.
Refinancing. Same duration, essentially, or
Better rate.
same duration,
My
though? Or?
ignorance, I don't know.
I could ask the treasurer. She's here.
Same duration. I didn't really look at that. I believe it's the same duration.
Very good.
I think it is too.
One of the, I guess
It's
one of
low interest rates.
one of the few, I guess if you could call it a positive of this economy that we're in, I guess. We get to lower some interest rates. Article 10 is similar in nature. Looks like we're doing this with sewer construction debt, reducing that by about $26,000. Actually, about a total of $105,000 total for sewer construction. So, I assume it's the same deal there, Linda. Yep.
The debt is within that article.
Good news. Questions on our debt restructuring?
I think it's important to know, Mr. Moderator, that anytime we do this, and my compliments to the finance team led by our treasurer in continuing to reevaluate our debt and our debt payments and to lower that burden whenever possible, it's important to note it has a direct effect on the tax rate whenever we lower debt. It reduces each and every homeowner and business's total dollar obligation that fiscal year. So that is a very important effort that goes forward through our finance team, and thank you, Linda, for that effort. It's hard work.
Very good. Yeah, going to the market for restructuring of municipal debt is by no means an easy task. Article 11, to see if the town will vote to transfer from Fund 240 the sum of $1,598 for replacement of the fan motor and inverter for the HVAC unit at the Raynham Senior Center. Comments or questions on Article 11? Article 12, to see if the town will vote to transfer from Fund 240 the sum of $6,610 for a new computer equipment for the town office computer system, or take any action relative thereto. Comments or questions on Article 12? Maybe this would be a good time to ask about Fund 240, Dwayne. This is a new entrant into the parlance of municipal finances, which appears to be a one-time supplemental state aid. Would that be accurate, Linda? Is that Linda, or? Yes, Randy?
Actually, this is just on the previous year, FY12. It was carried over into this year. It was read it out. I think it was in October of last year. It's one time.
So one time, good. Good to see we're using it for one-time items as opposed to part of our structural budget. Another good financial move. Article 13, to see if the town will vote to transfer from Fund 240 the sum of $4,300 for additional voting booths for primaries and elections. Comments on Article 13? Town clerk is here. Hello, Marcia. Is this for the new precincts?
Yeah, well, 20 booths.
20 new booths. You're going to need them on November, whatever. 6th? Yeah. Article 14, to see if the town will vote to transfer from free cash the sum of $10,000 for noise reduction headsets for 2 fire department fire engine/pumpers. Chief Janice, anything there? That's pretty self-explanatory, right? Any questions for the chief? Have to speak loud. Article 15, to see if the town will vote to transfer from Fund 240 the sum of $1,957.32 to Veterans Personnel Expense Account or take any action relative thereto. Comments and questions on Article 15. Article 16, to see if the town will vote to transfer from free cash the sum of $175,000 for the balance needed for the purchase of a new engine pumper, and to transfer from the fire engine pumper stabilization account the sum of $250,000 to complete the purchase of the fire engine pumper for the fire department. Comments on Article 16.
I just have a question. Is the 250 the amount we voted at the last town meeting? That part of it? No, we voted for the balance?
Last town meeting was last town meeting was
100, 150.
And now we're doing the balance? Just out of
which is
curiosity,
175.
why do we do it in 2 pieces like that? Because I've seen that before when we bought
3
pumpers.
pieces.
We did in 3
Whatever.
pieces.
Why do we do it more than just once?
We
Okay?
didn't have all the money available.
That's what I thought. That's fine.
We actually did it, in 3 pieces, 100, and then last year 100 and a half, and now 175, and there's an additional 100, Chief, too, that
Yeah, Walmart.
comes from Walmart.
100,000.
I thought that was good. I just wasn't sure.
Historically, if I'm not mistaken, Chief, I believe this is going back a few years, but the town used to enter into lease agreements, right, for some of the, I think that's going back quite a few years, but I think we
Not fire
never did a
trucks.
lease?
Not with the fire trucks.
No?
Not on the fire trucks.
Actually, we bought 2 for what we're paying for this one. In 1996. So, pretty near double.
Yeah, wow. Okay, Article 17, to see if the town will vote to transfer from free cash the sum of $34,200 for the firefighters' turnout gear, or take any action relative thereto. Questions for the chief on Article 17? Seeing none. Article 18, to see if the town will vote to transfer from free cash the sum of $17,136 for an upgrade to the police department's current telephone system to an IP office-based system. Questions on Article 18? There is a description or a descriptive note within the warrant talking about the current system being antiquated and higher cost to maintain. Article 19, to see if the town will vote to transfer from free cash the sum of $72,000 for 2 unmarked police vehicles. Take any action relative thereto. Now we're starting to get into the articles submitted by the Capital Planning Committee, actually. I just noticed that. Questions on Article 19? Article 20, to see if the town will vote to transfer from stormwater infrastructure stabilization account the sum of $50,000 for the purpose of providing professional services, land acquisitions, materials, and construction contract obligations in order to make improvements to the town infrastructure. Take any action relative thereto. Mr. Stolte is here. Questions on Article 20 for Mr. Stolte? Roger, is there anything, this is just sort of an umbrella article, correct? Or is there anything you have in mind for this, or?
We're still experienced, in my opinion, issues regarding that 2010 storm, because we have a lot of culverts and pipes that are, head walls that are falling in on a lot of our drainage systems. We had unforeseen occur at Hickory at Elm Street East, and we had one at Rogers Way. Those came in front of the ones that we had planned for this past year. So together, those two things just do the work was $50,000. And then one of them required about $10,000 in permitting and plans and other types of things. So that's, was still behind the 8 ball with regards to being able to keep up with this infrastructure that's falling apart. Not having all that done, I mean, this is in front of us, only to find another one on Judson Street by the pumping station where both head walls have fallen in. So that one's not even in the mix yet. So this is just an attempt to keep up with the ones that are caving in on us.
Okay. Questions for Mr. Stolte on Article 20? Article 21, to see if the town will vote to transfer from free cash the sum of $10,000 for the replacement of a waste oil heater in the highway garage. Again, questions for Mr. Stolte on Article 21? Article 22, to see if the town will vote to transfer from free cash the sum of $85,000 to a new stabilization account to be established for the purpose of purchasing a street sweeper for the highway department and take any action relative thereto. Note, the purpose of this article is to replace an 18-year-old sweeper in the highway fleet. Questions for Mr. Stolte on Article 22?
Is that a 2-year installment, Roger?
Yes.
Or 3?
No, two.
Okay.
Article 23, to see if the town will transfer from free cash the sum of $25,189 for purchase of a pickup truck for the cemetery department, or take any action relative thereto. Questions on Article 23? Seeing none, Article 24, to see if the town will vote to transfer from free cash the sum of $100,000 to the general stabilization account, or take any action relative thereto. Any questions would be directed at Mr. Wheeler, I would think would be appropriate. Any questions for Mr. Wheeler on the stabilization deposit?
I commented on this earlier, but this will raise us a general stabilization account to just over $1 million, $1,010,000, still about 150 to 200,000 more I would look forward to in the future.
The piggy bank, the rainy day fund, right?
Yes, it's a savings account, basically,
Yes,
for emergencies.
we have used it. It's rained before. It'll rain again. Article 25, to see if the town will vote to authorize the Board of Assessors and/or the Board of Selectmen to sign payment in lieu of taxes contracts for up to a 20-year term for large-scale ground-mounted solar photovoltaic installations. I should probably read these before I get here tonight. Upon terms and conditions as they seem appropriate to take any action relative thereto.
Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Lally. Chairman Lally?
Yes. This article will be amended on the floor. There was a typographical error. It should read to authorize the Board of Assessors, not Board or Assessors. And in addition to that, where it has authorized the Board of Assessors and/or the Board of Selectmen, we're going to strike the or. It'll just be read to authorize the Board of Assessors and the Board of Selectmen to sign payment in lieu of taxes.
So both parties both boards would have to sign?
The
Approve of,
the
yep.
Board of Assessors would negotiate and
Yep.
it would be ratified by the Board of Selectmen.
Can you have, so that's going to require amendments on the floor, just wording amendments. Could we have a typed copy for the clerk
Certainly, yes.
at town meeting Monday night? Thank you. Comments on Article 25. This will kick off into Article 26. 7, right? Is it? So maybe we'll just talk about the whole issue when we get to Article 27. Article 26, to see if the town will vote to accept as town ways the following: Whippoorwill Drive, Pheasant Lane. Just those two, Roger? Yep. Commonplace to see these on the warrant every year. Comments or questions on Article 26? Article 27, to see if the town will vote to amend the Town of Raynham zoning bylaws by adding Article 19 as specified below, or taking the action relative thereto. Clearly, I'm not going to read it, but essentially what this does is stipulate and lay out for any proponents of what they're calling a large-scale ground-mounted, it's essentially a solar farm. So this would appear to me, my untrained eye, to be a preemptive strike against anybody that would be willing or looking into a solar farm here in the town of Raynham. But I can't do this article any justice to the extent that whoever the proponents are here tonight could do. So if there's anybody in the audience that may want to give us a high-level explanation of what's being accomplished here, I think those in the audience would, and at home watching, would love to hear it. Hi there.
This article was put together with a group of people, including the Board of Selectmen, a representative from the Board of Selectmen, a representative from the Planning Board, a representative from the Conservation Commission, also from the Economic Development Commission, and we included, for the first meeting, a couple of engineers from the solar companies. It was an attempt to put in place some protections for the community through the bylaw for the large-scale ground-mounted solar photovoltaic installations. They generally are can be anywhere from around an acre to 25 to 30 acres, depending upon the size. There's a maximum that the TMLP will accept, but in a nutshell, the committee decided that they would be allowed within the business districts, industrial districts, so we get labels in there, light industrial, but only by special permit in any residential district or farm and forest district. And by doing so, the special permit gives the ability to deny them if they're deemed to be harming the welfare or safety of the residents within that area. A lot of this is dictated by where they're located in relationship to the nearest access to provide the electricity to the lines, so it has to be in relatively close proximity to those lines that can accept that. And they have to have an agreement with TMLP before they would be approved anyway. So that's basically.
So prior to this bylaw, if somebody were to come in today and this wasn't on the warrant, how would the town handle a solar farm? I mean, what, under current zoning rules and regulations?
There is no zoning bylaw for solar, but they would, I would imagine, have to go through site plan review. This does require site plan review, and in the case of under residential, a permit as well.
But there's nothing specific in today's zoning bylaws to. Very good.
Many communities are doing this, just
Yeah.
basically. And it does give us a requirement that the kind of information they provide to us has to be sophisticated enough for the planning board to clearly understand what's being built. And of course, we have engineers that will review it as well.
Do you expect going, I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but going forward, is this something that could be expanded to cover other types of green energy like wind and, yeah? Interesting. Mr. Ross?
Just a question on B5 under definitions, and you've already mentioned it, TMLP, that installations will not be permitted unless TMLP enters a contract. Does TMLP have a minimum size installation, or are they required by law to purchase electricity from any size installation? Because there's nothing in here that gives minimums. We got a maximum
We actually had a minimum in there of 250 kilowatts. And it was a determination of the committee. There are some that could be commercial grade that are under 250. The trouble is, the further down it goes, the less financially feasible it becomes for the installation. It's very expensive to do this. And TMLP would more likely be inclined to go with a larger because they only want to do it a few times. There's only a few places within Raynham that it would qualify for this. So we took the minimum out just in case somebody were to come in with something that's under 250.
Are we perhaps, as the technology gets more and more advanced here, though, are we, by putting this in place, are we prohibiting individual homeowners?
No, that's allowed by right anyway. Individual homeowners can put them on their...
Only on the roofs?
On the roofs, right.
But I have seen installations in places before where people have built their homes in such a way that they've used the natural cover of trees and stuff to shade their house for energy purposes, so it would not be conducive to it. And so the only way that they could then have, that they could set up an array might be on the ground. I just want to look forward here to making sure that we do not put undue hurdles in front of our citizens who may want to do the right thing in terms of energy stuff, and that you may want to consider having some sort of a minimum in place that would allow those interested homeowners to proceed if they wish.
Mr. Lewis?
At present, there's a, what they call a carport array of solar being constructed at the Raynham Flea Market. And what he'd have to do is, he had his engineers, and I think he went through the planning board or the Board of Appeals. And it was compared, I was told to me it was similar to building a canopy over a gas station pump. And it was a very easy process for him to do that. So I think that's in place for the smaller ones. One thing I would suggest on this is there are two solar fields under construction right now in our general area. There's one at the Haskins Farm, which is located in Berkeley, right off 24. It's the exit, that's the Berkeley Sonnet exit, I believe. In my opinion, it looks awful. There's another one being constructed at the old Taunton dog track on the Dayton-Taunton line. And also, in my opinion, it looks awful. Because you can see it from the street, it's not attractive at all. The Haskin Farm ones, I think, it's in a residential area, and it's very intrusive. I wouldn't want to live near there with that whole array. And I don't know if our bylaws have come to kind of protect that, to hide it away from the street and the neighbors. I hope so, because I wouldn't want this in my neighborhood.
The bylaw required that in the area, if it is allowed by special permit within a residential area, that there's a 50-foot setback on all sides, and it must be screened from view from any resident that abuts it. So.
Mr. Shallow?
Yes, I think Jim makes a very interesting point, and we have talked with the town planner about this, and that is without specifying what the minimum size of this solar array is, conceivably a very, very large system could be put in place, which may or may not be attractive to those that are co-located with. So, the maximum of 6 megawatts is quite a large installation. That would cover 1,200 average homes for electricity. So that'd be a considerable array. And that may be fine as far as has been said, that's the amount of power that the TMLP can handle. But I still kind of go back to the point that Jim Ross made, that is, without a minimum size, that's a pretty large, hallway to run through. And I wonder if we should rethink that.
Do we know how, so the maximum size is 6 megawatts. How large would a 6 megawatt installation be?
It's enough to power 12.
I mean, what's the footprint?
Footprint would be somewhere around 25 acres in today's technology.
Yeah. It's a lot.
I think it's a good idea.
Well, I mean, absent no bylaw, any
Right.
bylaw that affords the town some protection, it may not be the perfect bylaw, and I haven't read it, so that's not what I'm saying. But I think in this case, It's a fantastic first step, which can only be improved as you make it. I think we've learned over the years that the only time you find out the shortcomings of bylaws is when you actually get into negotiations about bylaws, right? So you're sitting across the table from somebody who's got your bylaw in front of them, and they are proposing a project, and they're going point by point, line by line, and that's when you find out where you may have missed a couple things, but you have to start somewhere.
The state requires that any regulations you put in place cannot be, I think the word is overly restrictive. So you have to be, and they mentioned specifically solar.
I think we've you know, Mr. Stolte will remember this discussion from not many years ago, several years ago, but when you're dealing with either a technology or a company that has been deemed a public utility, which I'm sure solar has. So in other words, the state looks at this and they say, that's in the greater good or benefit of the general populace. And I'm referring, Mr. Stolte, back to our days with Aquaria. We learned very early on that they were deemed a public utility, and that our negotiating stance was somewhat restricted because they had I guess you would call it the trump card, where they could slam on the table in front of you, we are a public utility, and the state will frown greatly on any unnecessary burden that you place on us to install this technology or process within your community. And I would assume that solar is considered a public utility. So our hands are a little bit tied on that. Mrs. Smith.
You know, I think, in fact, I brought this to Marilyn and asked her what she could do to help me put something together, and we got the team together to try to do this. My main concern was, in my travels, I have been seeing these springing up everywhere, and they look terrible. As Bill says, they do look terrible. My biggest concern was that this be put in a beautiful field that we have, XYZ place in Raynham, and who wants to live across the street from that and see it? So that was the beginning of why, okay? I know we're chuckling over here. The other thing, too, in respect of it was, well, what happens when these are no longer any good? What happens to them? We wanted to make some provision in there to say, you've reaped the benefit of it, therefore you have to clean it up and take care of it and get it out, so that we as a town now don't have, are they hazardous? Who knows at this point in time, okay? Then we also worked very hard trying to figure out, how do you assess something like this?
Mm-hmm.
Because let's face it, this is an unknown factor. It hasn't come to light before. So that's when we went to the Board of Assessors and came up with a plan there. But we tried our best to come up with it, and I do completely agree with you. Yes, it's not perfect, but it was the beginning of something that we tried to get started before we were forced to have these things.
Yep. Do we have any proposed on the table right now, or is that something that we can't talk about?
Well, what would be we know what the minimum is, right? For to be considered a large scale?
That's not in here. That
It's
was
not
really
in-
That's the point.
to the question, yeah.
Took it out.
If you didn't call this large scale, if you changed the title of this, I wouldn't have had as many problems with it, because then it's really applying to any scale of ground installed.
It was suggested at one point, and having heard all the other comments, which are obviously well put, it was suggested at one point that we just entitle this commercial and do away with trying to dance around what the definition of large scale is, which this doesn't really define. So I'd say, let's go for the better. We've got a good product here, let's make it as good as possible, substitute the word commercial and be done with it. And to Jim's point, if it's a residential situation, whether it's the roof or the ceiling or the floor, who cares? If it's commercial, it should be subject to the bylaws and the constraints that Marie Smith said.
Mr. Stolte?
This issue has been discussed several times now by people who've come in and talked to us about putting these devices on the landfill. And it's always run aground because TMLP, being a municipal power plant, wasn't obligated to pay a fair market value for the power. like National Grid is, but municipal light isn't. So I don't think, as long as, if that stays true for any amount of time, I don't see it as any major threat here, because the two proposals that they had here, and we had 24 acres that we could have offered them on the hill, and it just ran aground because it wasn't profitable for them.
Mr. Lewis?
One compromise between Richard, you may want to do is, as I mentioned, the flea market is putting a commercial carport solar array on their property. So you could call it commercial, but they can only use it for their use. It's restricted. So I would suggest that you say any of these are for sale back to the grid, and I'm not sure if I'm using the right term, but someone uses it for their own use. And the TMLP does restrict that. Right now, the TMLP will not let an individual, what they call net meter. So you can't, any extra you can't sell to the light plant. But these things are completely sold to the light plant. So commercial may not be the right term, but a term of arrays that sell.
Well, I want to, if I may, Mr. Moderator, I want to make it clear that, consistent with some of the other comments, this is a great piece of work, and the changes we're talking about are not significant. I mean, we're talking about just how we position all of this fine work and all the detail that went into it so that we get the maximum benefit from it. So this is not a major change so much as it is just a clarification. Yeah, it's cosmetic. Yeah, it's a clarification of who all of this language that has been put together very carefully applies to.
Question then would be, putting on my moderator hat, is this something that we are considering as an amendment on floor, or is this something that the group would prefer to, put it on the floor as is and then work on it over the next 6 months in time for the May annual town meeting? So I guess the first question would be, is there anything pending that, between now and May, that the changes that you've heard here tonight as far as wording, would those changes need to be made immediately in order to deal with the current proposal?
My understanding is we have at least one solar project in the works that will be coming forward relatively soon. So my recommendation would be to pass it and then work on it if you find that you want to tweak the language for the May town meeting. But the one coming forward is definitely a large-scale commercial project.
I was hoping you would say that.
Can I ask through you, Mr. Moderator, what was the minimum originally proposed that was withdrawn?
250 kilowatts.
And what was the mindset to withdraw that?
It was basically to cover those projects that might still be considered commercial, but was slightly below that. And that was it was a sample bylaw that was brought our way. When I brought it up to the engineer, we kicked it around, and he said, you're not in any danger of removing that 250 and just not putting a minimum. It will definitely be, anything that you look at has to have an agreement with TMLP. So they're only going to consider good-sized projects. They're not going to consider the smaller projects.
What's their minimum? Do they have one? TMLP as a policy? Through you?
I don't know, to be honest, to be perfectly honest. No. They indicated that it would have to be a good size, preferably larger than 250.
So perhaps just one more question. In light of the fact that there is a proposal pending, my guess is that it's not state secret, that it's probably, I haven't heard about it, but I'm sure that it's made its way through the community, especially to those people that may be abutters to the parcel that the proposal is pending. If there are concerns about the proposal that's out there right now, especially for the abutters or those in close proximity, would opposing this bylaw be detrimental to them, or would it?
Yes.
It would be, because if I'm hearing you right, because then that proponent doesn't have, now it's just simply site plan review.
Right.
Okay.
The special permit process allows the town to make a decision not to site it within a residential district if they deem it is harmful to the welfare of the residents within that area.
Okay. So it behooves us to participate in Article 28. And if you think that there's an open parcel near you that may be prime for a large-scale ground-mounted solar photovoltaic installation, you may want to come and participate. Now, last question, Article 28, which comes first, Article 25 or Article 27? Sorry, I mean, so if Article 27, are they mutually exclusive, Mark?
Well, as I'm looking at the warrant,
I know 25. If you tell me 25 comes before 27,
someone put it on there that way. Again, I would think that, well, I don't know, because actually, let's say Article 27 did not pass, and then, of course, all of the articles after that, I assume logically, would not pass either, because those articles are amending other portions of the zoning bylaw to accommodate what would be the new Article 19. I suppose you still could have, even if that didn't pass, you can authorize the Board of Assessors and the Board of Selectmen to sign payment in lieu of taxes contracts for large-scale ground-mounted, I'll do it, solar photovoltaic installations, whether we have a specific bylaw regulating them or not.
okay. All right, anything further on Article 27? I don't think I will read Article, as Town Council points out, Articles 28, 29, and 30 are more or less housekeeping items in the event that Article 27 passes. So I don't believe we need to review them here tonight. 31 as well. And that leaves us with Article 32. To see if the town will vote to amend the definition for adult retirement community contained in Section 18.3 of the Town of Raynham zoning bylaws, Article 18, adult retirement community, by deleting the following strike-through language and adding the following new language shown in bold print. So I'll read this because it's important, I think. They're striking, it's they, the proverbial they. It's being proposed to strike by persons who, let me read the whole thing. A self-contained alternative residential community of detached single-family dwellings, each single-family dwelling being on its own lot as shown on a subdivision plan, constructed specifically for and specifically limited to use and residency. And this is the proposal to strike for the following words: by persons who have achieved a minimum age requirement for residency of at least 55 years. So that was the initial description of an adult retirement community. Now, they're going, if struck, if by persons who have achieved a minimum age requirement for residency of at least age 55, that would be replaced by A, persons who are 55 years of age or older, hereinafter referred to as occupant. B, a spouse under the age of 55 years of age of an occupant may reside in the occupant's unit, hereinafter referred to as spouse. And C, a spouse who survives the occupant. D, a spouse where the occupant has entered into a long-term care facility. E, the parents of occupant or spouse. F, a paid caregiver providing medical or health care to an occupant or spouse. So, is there anybody here, a proponent of this here tonight, or did this come from Selectman Randy, or? No, citizen petition. Citizen petition, okay. Is anybody here to speak to this tonight, or? Want to try?
I can explain.
Yep.
This was brought through citizen petition by many of the residents who actually live in the Berry Hill retirement community. And what has happened is that by having the term that you have to be at least 55 years, that meant that both people had to be over 55, and they indicate that it's limiting their ability to sell the units. They've had several people interested in purchasing homes there, or purchasing a lot to build a home with one spouse was over 55 and the other spouse was under 55. So it was our recommendation that they, when they came to us, that they get a citizen petition, particularly the people who live there, so that we knew that they agreed with this, and the majority of the people who live there did sign the petition.
Mr. Ross?
Was that particular location, and others similar to that, were they granted special provisions, or was there anything about limiting to 55 or older in their initial plans and stuff that made it advantageous for them to develop the property, that we should be did we give away something initially that we should be thinking about by changing the rules to make it more profitable and marketable now?
I wasn't here at the time that it was originally proposed, but my understanding was that the planning board felt that it was important, I guess at that time, that both be over 55. It's not uncommon to have this language in an over 55. So I think that given the economy and the fact that this particular development was having a very difficult time since the original developer was brought back by the bank.
It's advantageous for us if they're successful.
I remember this vividly, the discussion on town meeting floor, the objections were to children, quite frankly, grandkids living with grandparents, and having, this was not my position, but I remember the discussion at the time was that there had been a fair amount of press, this was going back into the 90s and 2000s, but a fair amount of press of, in other communities, some of these communities had turned into just, not what they were designed to originally be, were just to be a place for active seniors to retire to. You had second-generation families living in there with their kids, and you actually had school bus stops within an over 55 community. And that was, I recall it vividly, that was talked about on town meeting floor, and I believe that this may have, Don or Marie, you can probably, this may have actually failed the first time on town meeting, if I'm not mistaken. I think it came back with restrictions that we're now dealing with today. But these changes do seem to, they seem reasonable to me. I mean, I don't think they open the door for the school bus stop. That's for sure. Anyway.
Why does it have so many changes within it, though?
I think one was for each household that's out there.
Yeah.
I mean, it would have been very simply to say, spouse can be of any age, only 2 people to a household, third party could be a caregiver. But right here, you've opened it up to the mother and father of the occupant of the house. You've opened it up to paid caregivers, healthcare providers. A spouse who survives the occupant, well, you're not going to throw them out, even if they are underage. But you're also, and I'm getting chastised back here for the comment, of saying that what if somebody marries a very younger woman and they have children?
For me.
Can't do that.
Can't do that under this bylaw.
Can't do that.
No, you cannot.
So it should probably read just spouse can be of any age, 2 people to a household, and a caregiver provision. If they want to keep it to 55 and older.
Yeah, your point's well taken. I think they accomplished that. It's just very verbose, to say the least.
I wasn't the proponent of this, but the attorney that represented the homeowners indicated that this language came directly from the state's language that regulates this, so it was exactly as the state regulations said.
That would do it. Certain to pass the Attorney General's inspection, that's for sure. All right, any further questions on the adult retirement community, Article 32? Seeing none, thank you, everybody. And again, it's Monday night, October 29th, 7 p.m. at the middle school. We will start at 7 p.m. if there are if there are 50 people there. I like to be punctual, so please be on time and participate in your local town government. Thank you.
we ought to do